Detroit Lions fans, welcome to What to Expect. This is my second episode in my brand new series where we discuss offensive and defensive units for your favorite teams in football. Today's unit that we have is the Detroit Lions defense, a unit that a lot of people have been talking about, that I've talked about in depth. The biggest thing, and I'm going to reiterate the format before we get into anything. First, we're going to roll off the 2022 stats. Then we're going to get into the offseason moves. And then after that, we're going to get into the scheme and the strengths and weaknesses of that scheme. Then the burning question at the end will be, were these weaknesses amplified or were these strengths made stronger? And I think that's what everyone wants to know because it's truly what we expect. Now, starting off with these stats in 2022, and I have a couple notes that I want to get into with this, but as we can see in the passing categories, number 17th in sacks per game, 2.3. Number 30th in pass defense, 245.8 yards allowed per game. Number 31 in yards per attempt, 7.5. And number 25 in opponent passer rating at 94.4, scale of 1 to 100. So, with the defense struggling, with these corners, safeties, linebackers struggling in the back seven, we still got after the quarterback. And I think that's something we can hang our hat on. Something we're going to see in this film breakdown we can expect in this upcoming season to be even better. Now, in the rushing category, number 29 in yards per game. 146.5, got to clean it up. Number 30 in yards per attempt, 5.2. So this is every time a team's running the ball, we can hypothetically say they're getting 5 a pop. Number 28 in first downs allowed, 7.9. So defensively, the stats, they're not pretty. But watching a lot of these games in depth, I think the highs were very high for this defense and the lows were very low. So I don't think that this defense was actually as bad as a lot of people think it was. I think they get a rep worse than what they deserve because you see the lows and you think that is the overall essence of this defense, but it's not. They played great at times, and in these lows, they would give up 250 rushing yards. They would give up 300, 400 passing yards. So in a game that they give up 250 passing yards, in a game that they give up only 90 rushing yards, we don't see that because the stats are so inflated for this defense. Since week 7, something I jotted down, the defense gave up 18.2 points per game for the rest of the season from that point. The New York Jets allowed 18.6. This was the second defense in points allowed per game. And the 49ers allowed 17.2. They were first. So we find ourselves in that range. And that's not saying because this is not the 7-game stretch for them. But for us, we can go ahead and say, okay, now we know this is good football that we played since week 7. Now, as many of us know up to this point, our key free agent signings and offseason moves that we're going to talk about for this defense, it mainly goes over to the secondary. That's a Cameron Sutton, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley. And we got Tracy Walker coming back. So thinking about that, we can see that the secondary was a point of emphasis, getting some veteran guys who've shown they can already do it rather than attacking this position in the draft. Now, as far as the draft, some of our offseason moves, we can see it right here. The defensive guys include Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Broderick Martin. And I think that is focusing on exactly what we have to focus on, and that's getting a guy at all 3 levels. We got Broderick, we got Jack, and Brian. So we got 3-level attackers from the free agency and the draft working on that. And I think the biggest thing before we get into this film, the secondary was pretty rough. And the front 7, talking about the linebackers, that was also pretty rough. I think the defensive line played a lot better than some people give it credit for. And we can see that because they didn't give a lot of free agency attention, a lot of draft attention to the defensive line. And that's basically saying we're kind of comfortable with our guys. And my impact player, we're going to see it in the film, Isaiah Buggs. Him and Aiden were monsters on this defensive line. And now the table is set. Let's finally dive into the film, starting off with the strengths. Let's roll the tape. So when Aaron Glenn needed a stop, we saw him run a lot of man coverage. Right here, we got a cover 1 robber look, and this is basically letting our guys in the back end play football, having that safety over the top for help, and letting our pass rush go get it. And on this play, 3rd down versus the Dallas Cowboys, all 11 were on the same accord. And those are the plays that you want to run again and again and again because the execution is so well. This is what we can trust to get us a stop. As you can see, we're in a passing down package. Got Kaminsky lined up in the 2-eye, got Anzalone bluffing, Aiden on the edge, and we got Okwara out there. Everyone's going to get pressure, and they're not all going to win their matchup, but we're all affecting the quarterback in some way. We're penetrating from the inside. We're getting around on the edges. All 11. The coverage in the back end was good. These are the plays that you want to see and what we need to keep doing, because as we see throughout the video, man coverage was Aaron Glenn's go-to. So right here, this was one of the rare plays I found when the Detroit Lions actually ran cover 2, but I think adding some of the guys they added, they'll be looking to do more of this. Adding the Chauncey, having Kirby Joseph still, Tracy Walker. Jack Campbell can now run that pole with the number 3 receiver, but right here, Alex Anzalone does a great job of doing it. And they disguise it a bit as Kirby Joseph starts off closer to the box, and then as the cadence rolls, he transitions back into his deep half. Now this is something I want to see them run more. Bringing in a Chauncey, bringing in a Jack Campbell. Now you have him and Alex who can run the pole in Tampa 2. And you have Chauncey, you have Tracy Walker, and you still got Kirby Joseph. All of these guys, I think this will be a bread and butter coverage. Having a Cameron Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley as well, I want to see this. And now I want to touch on the roller coaster ride that it was breaking down Alex Anzalone. With him and Rodriguez, there are very, very high highs and very, very low lows. I mean, that was everything. That's the essence of what these guys were, and it kind of reflected on the team. Now right here, he's going to cover up 2 gaps. Exceptional job, because he's going to cover this A gap, and as the running back bounces into that B gap, he's still there. So this is basically reading the defensive tackle in front of you, seeing which gap that he picks, and reading off of that. And he's patient right here. That's the biggest thing. I didn't see a lot of patient Alex Anzalone. And I think when I talked about him before watching these games, I said he doesn't trust his eyes sometimes, but we're going to see it in this video. I think it could be attributed to coaching, because a lot of what we see, he shoots the first gap there. And then sometimes he doesn't shoot the first gap there. So you're wondering, is it him or is somebody in his ear telling him these things? Shoot the first gap right here. Don't shoot the first gap. Be patient. Read the misdirection. I just think it's a lot of things in his ear that can be cleaned up, but we're going to see it. So the reason I said I didn't like cover 3 for this team is because their cover 3 is like a traditional cover 3. It's not a rip and Liz. It's not a match. They're cover 3. And that can always get ate up by defense. The seams are very weak. Sometimes the flats can be weak. Sometimes you get behind the hook of the defender. So now, with that being said, I think they give it a different look here. They disguise it a bit. Aiden Hutchinson dropping back into a hook, having that safety covering the seam initially because he's closer. And this is the type of thing you have to do. If you're going to run cover 3 and you do it like this, then I can live with it a bit. Malcolm Rodriguez coming in on a blitz, getting him a sack. But for Tua Tagovailoa, this is different for him, because if you're running regular cover 3, I know, okay, my seam's going to be there. Okay, I'm going to get behind this hook zone by the linebacker. Okay, I can get to the flat right here. But now, if we're not doing that, the route concepts play out differently, and that slows down his processor. Malcolm Rodriguez, welcome to the sack club. So like I said, I talked about the interior. I talked about how I was impressed with their play. It wasn't terrible from some of the teams that I've watched. I think it was pretty solid. And a lot of this came down to the linebackers making plays, being in the right gaps. Right here, shout out to Mike Hughes, who's no longer with the team, but he does a great job of defending the B gap. And Alex Anzalone trusting his keys, shooting through this play side A gap. And this is a wide zone run scheme by Minnesota, but because we see Mike Hughes come down, now we can't get to the outside, because how are we going to beat him out there? And then has to cut it back, Alex Anzalone. These are 2 guys shooting their gaps, stopping the run. And this is what we want to see more of, but we're going to see in this video, it wasn't. And if this play right here doesn't get everybody in Detroit as riled up as they can possibly get, I don't know what'll get you riled up, because we got Benito Jones and Isaiah Buggs being violent on the goal line, saying no. This was a game against the Vikings, a division opponent, and we got a turnover right here because look at them. We got Benito Jones in a 1, Isaiah Buggs in a 2-eye. They're absolutely going to decapitate this center and guard and get in the backfield to make a play right here. That's wanted. That's 2 defensive linemen who want the football, and I think that was a theme. This was a very violent, physical defensive line, and I'm talking about them with praise because I can say that comfortably now. Watching the film, and I talked about it, you don't waste all your offseason capital trying to get a big time name on the interior, because you have some guys, and you also got some guys on the edge who are pretty solid too. Now, before we dive into the weaknesses, talked about the strengths. I do think the defensive line were the strengths when this team was very, very good. I think when this team was very, very good, we can see right here, they played a lot of man coverage. So the defensive line being physical, guys getting after it in the back end, linebackers flying around shooting through gaps, all of these things that we have, this is what the team was when we were very good. But of course, it's time to talk about some of those lowlights. And understand, when we talk about the weaknesses and poor plays for this defense, we're not talking about them just to bash on the team. We're talking about how could we have been better here? How can we improve this so next season we're not worried about it? If it's a linebacker playing the wrong technique, shooting the wrong gap, we look at these plays and we think, okay, this one tweak will make it work. That's what we're going to do right here. But however, I do want to talk about Aaron Glenn for a bit, because I think he put some of these guys in the wrong situations. Right here, we got 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers. And we can see that one guy who's in the box, that is Jeff Okudah. He's going to be put in a position here to make a play in the box on running back Ezekiel Elliott. How many matchups out of 10 will he win in a one-on-one tackle with Ezekiel Elliott? Also right here, we see Alex Anzalone shooting a gap, but if he's just a bit more patient, I think he could still find himself in a great position to make this tackle and double up with Jeff Okudah. It's just so many little things. Alex Anzalone was productive. He had a good season. He's a good player, but I think there's so much more on the table with him. Athlete, size, all of these things can shed a block if he just gets a little more patient in the right times. Because truth of the matter, sometimes he has to shoot those gaps quickly to stop the run. But I wouldn't tell a linebacker to slow down. I wouldn't tell him to speed up. It's about feeling it, going with the flow. And we see Fred Warner, a guy I've talked about in all of my videos, basically with linebackers, he knows instinctively when to go fast, when to go slow. And this is one of the plays that Alex Anzalone could have had. And this is one of the things I talked about for Alex, because we got to pull in guard and tackle, but he's way too wide on his flow. We have to understand this is a threat to cut back. Understanding where our guys are going to be, and we see our defensive tackle gets washed out of his gap, so we the guy who got to be there, knowing that we got a guy to the left of us and we have a defensive end lined up over this tight end, so the outside is contained. We can flow a little bit, but we have to be patient. We have to be able to make a play if Zeke cuts it back. Right here, he cuts it back, but where's Alex Anzalone? He's outside of his safety help, and he's outside of the defensive end. That's never a good match to stop in the run. Right here, it ends up in a big gain, playing way too fast. And I think this goes for the entire defense when I say this. We have to be more disciplined. Play recognition has to be better, and it's a slight fix, understanding that. But when we go against these quarterbacks who run read option, even Sam Darnold in that matchup against the Panthers, they got us, because our outside D-gap defenders, they're biting down way too hard with the dive. Understanding that we got guys inside to go with that dive. You're trying to make a backside play that's not yours to be made. So if we just sit on these quarterbacks, and I think Aiden Hudson, he did a pretty solid job of it, but even he lost his outside contain at times. And it's one of the things that killed this team. We're getting outside of these guys, but we can't have nobody there to make the play. The safety, if we're playing one high, he's in the middle of the field. Our defensive end, he's out leveraged. Now Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, Jalen Hurts, all of these mobile quarterbacks, this was a way to eat this defense up, and I think teams did it towards the end of the season. And truthfully, I think Brian Branch will make this defense everything it needs to be. And this is one of the plays what I'm talking about. We saw the play where Jeff Okudah was forced to make a tackle in the B gap. Right here is Will Harris. When you run these formations and we got tight splits or anything getting a cornerback in the box, we got to understand these guys aren't used to being in this situation. Brian Branch is a guy who can also cover in tight splits, can cover in these condensed formations, but he can also make tackles like a linebacker. I think that's what hypes me up so much about him, because I saw this defense. That was the biggest thing that they needed, a tackling defensive back. Brian Branch will do that. And I love these linebackers to death, but I just think Jack Campbell would be better in this situation. We got cover 3, and it's so static. We know what it is. We know what the route concept is going to play out like. And that is why I harped on it so much for Coach Glenn. And we saw the one disguise cover 3 look, but it needs to be more of that if we're not going to match it, because there's so many ways to eat this defense up. It's never going to work. Right here, they eat up the cover 3 look, and that's a big play. And this right here is a tough ask, but I do think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson may be better in certain situations like this. Right here, and then look at the splits on the right side of the football field. They're very, very tight. So we have a one-on-one with Justin Jefferson on the outside. It's a cover 1 look, and the safety's over the top, but he's in the middle of the field. And I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, what he can do, what he may do, knowing him, seeing him play, having the ball skills, he can trick the quarterback a little bit here. We may line up a little bit closer to the other hash, and then as the play snaps, now we're hauling tail over Justin Jefferson. Those kind of little things, because if we just leave this corner out here on the island, he's going to be beat. He leans a bit, but he's still in the middle of the field, and this is hard to play when you got 2 guys. Now, think about it. If we have Cameron Sutton and we got Emmanuel Mosley, I'm pretty sure we can trust one of those guys on a given Sunday to cover their matchup. Now, Justin Jefferson, any of these number 1 receivers, we can trust them because we're going to help them over the top. So we got Emmanuel Mosley on the 2, Sutton over the 1 with help. This will be better. I think it wasn't good last year because who could you trust? And now he can't really fully lean one way, because if we get a guy over the top on the right side of the field, boom, bombs away. And I know everyone in Detroit has become fan favorites of Malcolm Rodriguez, deservedly so. Great rookie campaign. But I think it's going to be a rotation with these 3 guys. Maybe 4 if we add in Derek Barnes. Having him, Jack Campbell, Rodriguez, and Alex Anzalone, because I don't think anyone has done enough to stand out as that solidified guy yet. Right here, this is an easy slight fix that we can make, because look, the play that we have right here is going to hit right in the play side A gap. If Malcolm Rodriguez is just a tick more patient, he's right there to clear up this play. We got Alex Anzalone. He's doing his job. He's covering his gap. But where do we have Rodriguez going? He's covering a gap that's already covered up by this safety. So as I get to the conclusion of this video and wrapping it up, talking about what do I expect in 2023 from the Detroit Lions, I expect a way better defense. And that's not just saying it just to say it. I think when we looked at what some of the problems were, adding in depth with the rotation, Broderick Martin, he's going to help a defensive line who I think was pretty solid last year. And that's not even mentioning, you still got Levy Onwuzurike, you still got Aleem McNeil, all of these guys on the interior. Isaiah Buggs, I think he can be the best in that room. But to continue with that front 7, you got in Jack Campbell, and that's basically going to buffer. Like I said, I do think there will be a bit of a rotation there early on, but one guy is going to stand out above the rest. I'm excited to see who it is, and I think Jack Campbell has all of the intangibles and athleticism to do so. Now, the biggest thing I thought about this team, the linebackers having better eyes, their techniques. Was it some of the coaching inside of that? But with this secondary, it just wasn't good enough. And that was the biggest thing. Okuda, all of these guys, it just wasn't a product that would get us to where we want to go. And I think bringing in a Sutton, bringing in Emmanuel Mosley, Chauncey Gardner, Brian Branch, and Brian Branch being the most important to me because he can tackle. So when you have that extra guy, adding that 8th guy into the box, Brian Branch needs to be that guy. One of the best, I can say closely to the best tackler in this draft. As far as DBs, he was the best defensive back tackler in this draft. So having him, that's going to do magical wonders for this team. What to expect in 2023? I expect a revamped defense, and I expect a team that's going to compete because the offense is the offense, but the defense has gotten tremendously better. We see it right here, what they did well. We see it right here in the back half of the season. Saw what they did poor and how they can improve on that. What do you expect from the Detroit Lions defense in 2023?